welcome to another episode of Dentmans. And today we have the one and only Avi Patel, the person that went from unknown to the 2024 dentist influencer. So, Dr. Patel, I can say some things, but I'm sure you can introduce yourself way better.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, I'm Dr. Avi Patel, dentist, clinical educator. Yeah, there's been other titles and stuff that has been given to me, but basically, I am I'm a dentist who's basically out here trying to help other dentists and organizations implement clear aligners into their practice. That's very high level. We can unpack a lot of that too, but yeah.
So, starting from the beginning of your journey, how did you get into dental?
So I got into dental because my uncle was actually my source of inspiration. So he was a dentist, kind of saw how he was living his life. I thought that looked pretty awesome. I mean, he was working a couple days a week, had a nice house, traveling with his family, seemed to always be in a good mood. And at a young age, I was like, that sounds great. And obviously being Indian, my parents were very much wanting me to be a doctor of some sort. I didn't want to go to medical school because I just thought working in a hospital would be miserable. And so dentistry was kind of the thing that I was drawn to. And funny story about that. So I was actually shadowing him for a summer in high school, and he had a dinner party. And at the dinner party, it was all his friends. And, he was having a great time. Everybody was having a good time. And then I was talking to one of the guys. He was a neurosurgeon. And so he was just curious. He's like, what are you trying to be? Like, what do you want to do? And so he was giving me some advice and whatnot. And then his first piece of advice is like, well, the first decision you need to make is, Art, do you want to go to medical school or do you want to go to dental school? Like, it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Like, after that, the specialties and everything doesn't matter. So I was like, okay. And then I kind of looked around the room and I saw that like he was the only one that wasn't like, partaking or having as much fun with everybody else, call it drinking and whatnot. And then I was like, oh, so is there a reason why you're not like, having a good time with them? He's like, oh, I'm on call. And I was like, that seems like something that I don't want to have to do in the future. So I think at that point it's cemented. I'm like, cool, I think I'm going to just go to dental school. But yeah, I think, the what is pitched out there for dentists, which is, you'll make good money, you'll live a good life, all that stuff. You'll help people. I think there is truth to that, but I think what is reality is it actually is not instant. It actually takes a very, 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 very long time to even reach that point. Obviously, I was basing all this off of my perception of my uncle, but he had been practicing for 15 years at that point. He didn't have nearly as much student debt as every dentist has now coming out of school, or most dentists have coming out of school. So it's just a totally different landscape. I think the three buckets of time, money, and fulfillment are three things that we all value and we're all driven, towards. And you can get it as a dentist, but I think nowadays you just have to be way more creative about it.
Absolutely. And how long have you been practicing for?
So I actually stopped practicing last year. I was practicing since 2018, and then what kind of drove me to stop practicing was the business that I created. It's an education platform. It's called Clear Aligner Advisor, and we support dentists and DSOs integrate and implement clear aligners in their practices. Brand agnostic education. We don't have one brand of aligners like Invisalign or SureSmile or ClearCorrect or anything like that we work with. We train doctors on the actual treatment itself because there's a massive gap in the education. And by gap, I mean it's non-existent. The orthodontic specialty has done a good job of making sure that general dentists don't learn this in school, but that's changing, right? Everything changes. And so, yeah, part of my mission is to get this information out there to be able to help general dentists offer the procedure because it is a phenomenal procedure. It's a really good way to, yes, help your patients, but also grow your business. So whether it's a solo practice or if it's a DSO, if you're not doing clear aligners, you are missing the boat.
So that's quite interesting that after basically 6 years, after 5 years of practicing, now you got into this new business. So I have a couple of questions with that. What challenges did you face after you graduated from dental school? And how did you go into this kind of business? Because majority of dentists, after they get out, they think of acquiring clinics, making a DSO, basically making a brand out of the offices that they acquire. How did you get into this kind of business and not that?
Great question. And I'll add to what you just said. It's actually most dentists don't, yes, most dentists think practice ownership is the next step. And then a significant amount of them don't actually go down the route of actually building a brand. They just open a clinic. That's all they do. They don't actually focus on brand or business or anything. They just go open a clinic, and then they usually hate their lives because it's super stressful and they don't know how to run a business. So that's kind of the perspective there. It's harsh truth, but it is what it is. Every dentist that's listening is probably nodding their heads and they know that's the case. For me, I honestly, it was a very unexpected thing. Like, I did not come out of dental school and say, I'm going to create, clear aligner education business or a platform rather. And that was not what was on my mind. For me, I was constantly trying to learn. I was constantly trying to level up. When I came out of school, it's like, cool, let me just get good at the basics. And that's what I always focused on, was how do I get good at the basics? So in the beginning, it was fillings, crowns, root canals, you kind of go up. But then while I was doing all that, I ended up burning out. I hit the 2-year burnout mark. I did not enjoy what I was doing. I did not feel like I was helping people. I wasn't making that much money, honestly. I had a bunch of debt. Pandemic hit. And I'm a big believer of like everything happens for a reason, right? So pandemic hits, everything shut down. I'm at home. My wife still has her job. She works remote. She's in finance. And I'm just sitting there and I'm like, at first I was like, I'm going to learn. So I got Spear and I was like, oh, I'm just going to learn. I'm going to level up during this time. But I couldn't apply it. So then I was like, okay, whatever. Like, this is, like anybody during COVID, not a lot was necessarily getting done. But it sparked change. And so we ended up moving down to Austin. I worked for a DSO there. They offered mentorship and stuff like that. That's where I met my mentor, Dr. Christina Blocker. She basically guided me with aligners in the beginning. So, I went to her and I was like, hey, can you just help me? Like, I need to know, what should I not do? What can I do? And then if I get stuck, like, can I come to you? And she's like, yeah. So I kind of just learned trial by fire and leaned on her, and I had success. I started over 50 cases my first 6 months, and I thought that was normal. Any, aligner rep would kind of, their eyes are probably wide open when they hear that, because they started coming to me and they're just like, what are you doing? Like, how are you having so many case starts? And I was like, I'm just talking about it with everybody. And so then that's when they were shocked, because they were basically just like, well, how are you able to do all these cases and you're not even like doing like the scanning presentation, like, right? Because I had the most case starts in the DSO and I had the fewest number of like wellness scans, because they track all that. And that's where I basically realized like, oh, like the way I'm talking about this is different than most. But it all comes down to confidence, right? And it's because I knew that somebody was in the background, had my back in case I got stuck. I was then able to translate, that confidence into my case presentation. So again, this is just me looking back and connecting the dots. I didn't know what was happening when this was happening. I was just, doing stuff, but that then translated to me coaching up the other dentists in the organization. One of the dentists that I was working with, he had about 20 years of experience. He had never done a case. I was guiding him. He went on to have success. And then he was like, I wish I did this earlier in my career, because like, I never knew this was possible. Then I started doing some consulting. I didn't know what consulting was. I was like talking to people, giving them advice on the phone. And my wife was like, you should start charging for that. And I was like, what does that mean? I was like, I'm just giving advice. She's like, you're teaching people how to like go do a procedure and make a lot of money. She's like, you can charge for that. I'm like, oh, what is that? She's like, that's called consulting. And I'm like, okay, so I guess I'm going to do some consulting. So I started doing that on the side. I would go into practices and work with them locally here in Austin. A doctor never did a case before. He started doing 25 cases his first 2 months. So that's where I was like, okay, I have like a curriculum now. Like, I actually have a way to do this. So now it's like, how do I do more? Right? Anytime, and I think, you guys are probably similar. Anytime you have success with something and it lights you up, it's like, okay, how do I do more of this? How do we scale this? So that's when I took to social media. I read Grant Cardone's 10X rule, that book. My mom actually put me on it, and I just started getting really fascinated with the idea of omnipresence. And so I was like, cool, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to show up everywhere all the time, and this will help me grow in one way or another. And so I started posting on Instagram. I would make reels. Before this, by the way, I had like maybe 800 followers, like just family and friends. Now I have over 48,000. And all just from dental content around aligners. So super niche, right? Like the kind of stuff where if you're not a dentist and you saw it, you would be like, I don't even know what this guy's talking about. So super hyper focused, just as giving as much value as I can. And then I was getting people onto basically like a call, right? That's a sales call. I know we're getting in the weeds here, but I'll tie it all together. Basically, I was having sales calls without even knowing what a sales call was. So very much like building the plane and flying it at the same time. And then not that many people were converting because I didn't know how to do sales calls. And then the next mentor in my life came up, Dr. Ranesh Ganatra, and he was like, "Hey, I see what you're doing." He's like, "You need to make a course." And so he's like, "It's gonna be way more scalable." He's like, "You're gonna be able to help more people." And he's like, it's gonna be way better than what you're doing now. I'm like, "Okay, I'll try it." So I made a course, Aligner Blueprint, and now to this day, we've got over 190 doctors who have gone through the program. And primarily, this was just marketed through social media. Was making YouTube videos as well. Believe we have like 12,000 followers there, and so it's like really just kind of locking into this niche to the point where then I was voted 2024 Dentist Influencer of the Year. That was not like on the plan at all, but I was just showing up in a very real way, right? So being real, sharing the truth, sharing stuff about my life led to this growth, and then from that has now translated to helping DSOs. So basically there's a huge gap. DSOs have resources, but some obviously everybody has resources. DSOs have a lot, and then they're always trying to figure out what's the best use. And so there's two things in dental that are growing very fast and at similar rates. The DSO market is growing at about a 17 or 18% rate, compound annual growth, and clear aligners as a procedure is growing at 30%. So you've got two of these exponentially, right? They're both on a trajectory to just take off. And then so I kind of position myself as like the link between them, because as you see, there's a new aligner brand on the corner of the street every day now. So it's not a matter of just whose plastic is better. It's like all the plastic is plastic. It works the same. It's a matter of, okay, now who is able to actually get dentists to use this and be successful with it. And the thing is a lot of these companies have tried to take that off the plate, right? You've got these companies that have come up and they're like, "Hey, we'll do everything. We will do the billing. We will do the consultation. We will do everything. We just need the dentist to back us, or we just need them to sell the case or whatever it is." And there's value in it. I think so, right? Because they're solving a need, but that is like step 5 in the process. You can't even get the dentist through step 1 and 2, which is picking a case and selling it. And then step 3 is having the confidence, right? So like, for example, a patient comes in, and if a dentist doesn't actually know what's going on, like this is just a dentist being real with you, we're not going to talk about it. Like, we're not going to talk about it with the same level of confidence that we do when we know what we're doing. For example, if a dentist is trying to get a patient to do a crown, if they see a crack on the tooth, they're going to be on that patient, telling them all about this crack, showing them pictures, zooming in and telling them that the crown is the only way to fix this, right? Or onlay, whichever way you practice. And that same passion is not there with aligners because they don't know what they're doing. And so that's where I bridge the gap. And I do it by simplifying it, for all the orthodontists or aspiring orthodontists that are listening. Don't worry, your profession is very safe. If anything, you will get more referrals the more you support general dentists doing aligners, because they're going to talk about it more and refer more, because that's what happened to me. I referred way more when I knew what I was doing than before. That's just part of having an abundance mindset. So yeah, that's where we're at.
That was quite the story and quite the one to be able to digest. So going back to earlier on in your journey, what you mentioned that the way you were doing it was different from other ones. So you had competitors, but you were doing a better job.
In terms of when I was like doing the cases?
Yes, what made you different and why were you different?
So I don't know if there was necessarily competition. I think for me is I wasn't focusing on cosmetics. I was focusing on oral health, right? A cosmetic approach to treatment planning and diagnosis is only going to capture a small part of the market. Most people don't actually care about that, or rather they find it harder to justify that investment. Whereas if you position it as their oral health will improve, that message lands with way more people and is way easier for them to justify that. So that's all I was doing. And again, I didn't invent that, I did not invent that way of thinking. Like, there are a lot of dentists out there that I, was able to kind of pull from. And even aligner companies, like their reps are preaching this stuff, but that's the difference, right? They're a rep. They're not a dentist. Or they're an orthodontist, they're not a GP. So with GPs, it's really that peer-to-peer way of learning is what's missing, because we can speak the same language, we can relate to each other. I don't know what it is. I think in today's world, like, people are just trying to find more people kind of like them. And so if it's almost like if you're not kind of at the same level, or you haven't gone through the same things they have, they tend to not value your opinion or your advice as much. So yeah, again, everything that I've said, like, I'm very self-aware. I know that I'm not for everyone. I'm not for the dentists that want the full-blown 50-hour course and curriculum on like every little detail of the science of it. Like that's not me. Frankly, I don't really think that's the important stuff. I've kind of taken everything I've learned and like simplified it. So I'm for the dentist that's like looking for a simple way to just take the next step. And same thing for DSOs, right? It's like if you want a super complex way to support your doctors and pay for them to fly places and take courses and then, leave it all on them to implement, like that's not me. It's very much just like, hey, how can we simplify this? How can we make it impactful? And then how can we also make this scalable? That's just kind of what's always worked for me, even when I was practicing clinically. And I've just translated it over to the education space.
That's a very interesting viewpoint, because just 2 nights back we were having the same kind of conversation about niching down your business just to your target customers. Not that you try to target all the market. There's no industry that you can build a product that's built for the whole, but like the basically totality of that market. There always has to be a niche, and that's the key to scalability.
We always underestimate the size of a niche. We overestimate. Yeah, I don't know what there's a way to link the overestimate and underestimate. But we always underestimate the impact and the actual scalability that you can get out of a niche, because it's scary in the beginning. Everybody wants to build the next best thing. Everybody wants to help a lot of people, make a huge impact and make a lot of money. Like so, everyone thinks it's
Basically this.
right. It's always big, big, big. But it's like, no, like help a small group and you will be blown away by how many people will be drawn to that.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. That's very true. That's, I think, when you're trying to step into any kind of business, like the business of dentistry or the business of aligners or the business that we're in, it's very important to niche down your product and just go after a target group of customers. So a follow-up question to that, how do you find your niche customers? Like what strategy, like on a general term, because I don't want to go too specific because it could be different from like business to business, but generally what method did you find? Because that's something that we are as a business struggling with.
Yeah, I think it's like what problem are you solving? And then it's like, okay, who has that problem? Like who is that? So if you know what the problem is and you can define it and you can define how you solve it, right? And this is kind of thinking from back to front. Now it's like, okay, who out there is this a major problem for? Right? Because everybody's got problems. We all got problems. But like, who is this a major problem for? That should be the first customer and the first audience you go after. And then if you want a secondary niche, who is this a problem for in a couple years? But if you target and market and go super deep on the first person, it will trickle down to the bottom. For example, I did this in the beginning. Same thing. I used to say, I want a liner. I want to teach every dentist in the world how to do this. I'm going to teach everybody. But what happened is in the beginning, like my stuff, it works, right? It works and it's valuable for the right person. And I didn't know what that meant. And what happened is in the beginning, there would be people who wanted this massive library of information. They wanted like to just spend 50 hours consuming the content. We all know when somebody spends that much time consuming content, they're probably not going to take action, right? So then they consume, so at first it's like, oh, like there's not enough information in here. And I'm just kind of like, okay, like it's working for these 10 other people. And it's because they were a dentist who was not accustomed to learning like that. And I don't like to put age into a niche because I do think it's all about mindset. Because I've trained doctors who are fresh out of school and who have 20 years of experience, and it's just the mind. It's not actually anything else. That's it. So for kind of going back to what you're saying in terms of like the niche and how to figure it out, it's for me, I realized I'm like, cool, like the problem I solve is, a dentist wanting to implement aligners who's open to that idea. And then it's like, who has that the most? And it's like, well, at that point, it's any dentist who's like trying to make more money, have more time, and feel like they're making a bigger impact and have more fulfillment in their career. That's the type of person. Now, which person is that? Is that the new grad? Is that the associate? Is that the owner? And so that's what I've seen like usually that person is like, it's either the new practice owner who's in the mindset of growth and just taking action, right? Because they're in a new chapter of their career, or it's that seasoned associate that's been in the game for a bit, who's like, you know what, I got to do something else because what I've been doing for the last 4 years is not cutting it. That's what I found to be kind of like my sweet spot. But the trickle effect, right? The halo effect is there's dental students who've been following me. And so there's brand new grads. And so they may not be able to get into my program right now, or it may not make sense for them to get in because they're in a situation where it's fluid. They may not be there long term. They may have an owner that's not open to it. So right now, they're not a good fit. But as long as I keep showing up, as long as my marketing is consistent, as long as I'm providing value and I'm still known, when they're ready, because they will be in 2 years, 3 years, they're coming to me. So that's it. It's like kind of extending, and this is something that I've been playing with lately. I'm a big fan of Alex Hormozy. I got to go to their workshop back in August, and ever since then, like the key concepts that he's been hitting on is like focus, like singular focus, the power of that in everything, but then also expanding your time horizon. So like I was in a headspace early on of like kind of wanting this like overnight success, or like just see the wins starting to stack. And that happens when you have something. You can feel that high initially, but then what happens with any market is like those are the early movers, right? You're feeling all the early movers, the early adopters. Then there's a lag, and that lag is it's the wall between you and the rest of the market, because most of the market needs to catch up. And so that's a time thing. That's like patience. That is not a better product, a different price point, a different marketing line. That is time. And none of us can solve for that. And that comes at different rates for everybody. Right? What I'm realizing is my time gap is it's longer than I was thinking, because I was just feeling that over the last, probably this year. This year I was feeling a little bit of that. I was feeling the lag. And so I tested so many different things, and then I was actually getting feedback, and I realized like now that enrollments are coming back in, it's like they literally told me, they're like, I followed you for 2 years. I love your messaging. I wasn't in a place to buy. Now I made up my mind that in 2025, I wanted to prioritize ortho, and I knew you were my guy, and that's why I enrolled. Or they were like, I was an associate. I couldn't do it. I just bought a practice last week and I wanted to implement ortho immediately. And so I got in. So now I'm just like, okay, like this was a theory that I had, by the way, earlier this year. I like theorized because I was like, there is no reason why there's no other way to justify like why enrollments are like slowing down. I was like, oh, maybe we got to do a new webinar or this. And again, you do have to do iterations. I'm not saying you just leave a business to do nothing, but it's patience, and I'm still feeling it and experiencing it. But the other piece is that's also when most people quit. Right? That's when they quit on that business. That's why you've heard people like, yeah, I've done 9 businesses, 10, 20 businesses. Oh, what happened? It's like they left most of them because they just didn't stay in it long enough. And so that's where I'm trusting trusting all the podcasts and talks I've heard from some of the most successful people in the world, where they all say the same thing. Like you just have to be willing to do it longer than everyone else, and that success will be there.
That's very true. I mean, that's something that I was discussing in a different meeting like an hour back, that
I was in all your guys' meetings, clearly.
yes, yes, the topics you talk about, they were in all of our meetings. The funny thing is that like we were just talking about success and failure along the way, and that for you to succeed, there has to be many failures, but the one constant is that if you keep moving, no matter how many failures you have, it's going to be success at the end, no matter what. Like that's 100% true all the time.
You can't lose if you don't stop.
You can't lose if you don't stop. That's very true. So I had just another question, and then I'm gonna ask other guys to ask more questions because I'm sure everyone has questions. I don't want to steal the whole stage. You mentioned messaging. What's the right way for a business to come up with their messaging, the right messaging? Because I think that has been the most important factor in your success so far.
You have to say what the problem that you solve is in your ideal audience's words, and it has to align with what you are actually trying to do. So, for example, the messaging that I go with is it's usually like, hey, if you're a dentist who is tired and bored of bread and butter dentistry, and you want to help more patients through a procedure where you can make more money, have more time, and feel fulfilled, then I'm here to help you learn how to do that. So you wanna definitely speak to their problem, and then if you can paint the picture of their problem, you will naturally be perceived as the expert or the person to solve that problem. Like you will be perceived to have the solution to that problem. And so the more like vivid you can describe that, the better off you're going to be, and the easier your messaging will be. And the way that you do that is you poll people, right? So poll existing customers, poll potential customers, kind of see where the common thread is. and then take that and then you build your messaging around it. And when I first started this business, ChatGPT did not exist. So I didn't have to do that, which is crazy to think like that's like a thing. That's like a reference point that we're all going to be like talking about now forever. It's like, oh, like I started my business before ChatGPT. But ChatGPT came in when I was already, when I was already in the game for about a year and a half. And I was like, oh my God, this is incredible. But it's wild because now it's like, if I always said when I started, the bar was already super low to start a business. And even like on social media, like it's so low. The bars could not have been lower. And then now ChatGPT AI comes on the scene and it's like, this is like a no-brainer if that's the life you want to go down, right? Of entrepreneurship and all that. But yeah, I would basically take like, because this is what I did is I just had an in-person boot camp for 2 days, taught doctors how to do aligners. We got testimonials, took the videos, got them transcribed on like Descript or something, and then I just copy pasted it into ChatGPT, and then I just said, hey, this is what 7 of my ideal clients said about the content. Give me marketing material. And then they gave me like social media posts, emails, everything. And you just take that. And it's literally in their words, like literally in their words. And then I asked them like, what is the common thread here? And they were like, everybody appreciated, like everybody liked the connection aspect to be able to make friends because they felt like other events, they felt lonely. So it's not even about aligners. Most people liked it because they got to make friends, which is crazy. Like, so you learn a lot that way.
Yeah. Hey, Doc, thank you so much for explaining all that. And just to go back to that, I think on the last podcast or the two podcasts before, we were talking about how as dentists, I mean, me myself, when I graduated dental school, came out, and now as I'm in the business, some days, man, I feel so isolated. Even yesterday, I was like, I told you on LinkedIn, I was like, hey, Doc, I just got this case. They don't tell me anything. They're like, just IPR this and you move on. And I'm like, I have no idea what's going on. So I think that isolation part of it in our field is so real. And then as a dentist, that's exactly it, man. We just want to go to places where we feel so connected and so, we're able to make friends, pick each other's brain, and just essentially, and that's what I enjoy about, the social media aspect of things, that I'm able to connect with you, with like the people I've been able to connect with so far. And yeah, the clear aligner, I think, is a big part of our business and it's a big part of our industry. But like you mentioned, it's like just a lack of confidence about like me, myself. Like sometimes I stay away from like touching certain cases and just be so selective on what I do because I'm not confident. I don't know. I'm like, if I pick this, is this teeth gonna like move too much? Is it gonna gain that much mobility? It's just like all of those things are the things that you just mentioned. It's so real for us because we don't know. We don't know. We don't know what the outcome of it is going to be because we don't have enough experience of it. So like everything that you were just saying, I was like, man, this is so real because as a practicing dentist, I deal with that all day long because I'm like, well, this teeth is sitting on top of this teeth like this. If I do it, what's going to happen? And you don't know because you haven't experienced it. So I think it's what you do is so important for our industry. I mean, that's absolutely, it's fascinating to see because even I got my Invisalign certification. After I finished it, I was like, now what? Now I don't know anything. I mean, I still felt lost because honestly, I was like, they just had a bunch of videos and then you're like, you watch the videos and then you end up still not knowing what happened. And that's the part that is like, that one-on-one connection is so fascinating. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
No,
man, it's
you're not
amazing.
alone, man. You're not alone. That's literally what everyone feels. Even after going through, through that training, it's more of the they're just teaching you how to use their product. They're not teaching you how to do the procedure. And you can't blame them. Like people get upset at them for not teaching them. And it's like, if you want to get upset at anybody, you get upset at your dental school. Like you don't need to get upset at a line. Like that's not their fault. They're not supposed to teach you how to be a dentist and do a procedure, right? So, but to your point also about like the social media aspect and the connection, dude, like I see doctors all across the world reach out to me and there's like, they're in Germany, India, Russia, like all over China, like they're just like, they'll message like, yep, this is what we go through. Dang. So it's like in the culture of the profession. It's like it sees no borders, which is crazy.
Well, Doc, I know your time is very limited. I do want to thank you so much for coming on. I really enjoyed this talk and, I'm very excited to attend one of your classes to learn more. And we got to also check out Doc on YouTube, man. His content is amazing. I love it. I watch your stuff all the time.
My man, my man.
Yeah,
Hey, do me a favor. Share, because I see we both are making moves where we can on LinkedIn. I see you because I recently joined. LinkedIn has been awesome too. I think it's easier than any other platform,
100%.
frankly, to make connections. It's like literally built for that. And yeah, do me a favor and like share one of my videos. Share one of the ones that you like. Just post it on LinkedIn.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Doc. We'll do, and I will show. Like I said, I enjoy your content so much about aligner. I was actually just talking about it with one of my classmates last night. I was like, man, check out Dr. Avi. He's doing his thing on YouTube, man. This stuff is nice.
I
So yeah, man, I
appreciate it.
definitely enjoyed it. We'll share your videos. I know your time is limited, so I really want to thank you from the crew. Our door is open. Please come back and share more stuff with us. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it. I wanted to just tie the loop on that real quick.
Sure.
So when I made the video you saw, I probably made a year or 2 years ago, right? Like I probably didn't make it last week. I haven't made a video in like a couple months. So it's crazy. Like you make content, it goes on social and it lives there. And Dr. Milad was not looking for this 2 years ago. And here he is now watching, sharing, and the impact is there. So like that is the power of social media, which is nuts. But yes, thank you for having me on. Appreciate the time, guys.
Thank you so much, Dr. Patel. And yeah, as you mentioned, it's an everlasting impact when you create good content. And there's so much value in that. Even myself, like I'm not a dentist right now. I could, benefit from that video 10 years later. Who knows? Thank you so much for coming on, and thank you so much for all the advice, especially on the business side. Yeah, as Dr. Oji mentioned, the door is always open. We would love to have you again.
Appreciate it. Sounds good, guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.